We can speak now to Jerry Izenberg, who's a sports journalist in the United States and was a close friend of Muhammad Ali's. Thank you so much for joining us today. I mean, we've known for years that Muhammad Ali had Parkinson's disease, and we've known for days that he was ill in hospital. But still, this comes as a huge shock because for so many of us around the world, Muhammad Ali was always there, wasn't he, Jerry?
Well, he was here, there, and everywhere. I met him in 1960 at the Rome Olympics, and we struck up a friendship. Pardon me, even though I was a sports columnist, which really transcended that by so much. I haven't seen him for the past 2 years, and I know a friend of mine went down there who was part of the camp, and he said Ali didn't even recognize him, and I decided I wasn't going to go. I'll tell you why, and I'll open this segment with that. This is how I'm going to remember him forever. He beats Foreman. We have this torrential rainstorm. And he goes, of course, he finishes what his press conference, he's gone. We're there riding, we're trapped and everything. So we don't get back till the sun is just about to come up in Zaire over the Congo River. And I said to the guy I was with, I said, let's go find him. I got to write another piece tomorrow. I didn't like what I wrote tonight. It was rushed. So we guys, we're going to look. There's 20,000 acres in this military installation. I said, look, there's only one shot we can take. Let's go down to the river. We go down to the Congo River, and there is himself. Now you got to picture the scene. The two of us are standing on this sort of an elevated bank. It's, like 10 feet higher than the shoreline. He's on the shoreline. He's staring across the river at what was once upon a time French Congo. And he just stands there. Now, we can't see anything but the back of his head and his body. And we don't know whether he's singing, talking, mumbling, or just staring. And all of a sudden, and he doesn't know we're there, all of a sudden he shoots both arms into the air in the Rocky pose and doesn't move. And then he turns around, and he starts to walk, and he sees us. And he says, fellas, I got to tell you, I can't explain what tonight means to me. And probably if I did, you wouldn't understand me. But I got to tell you, it's the greatest night of my life. And I think back to that moment, and I think back to the years of these handshakes and the way he would get introduced in the ring, and he'd have his hands in his pockets so that people wouldn't see them shake. And then they lit the Olympic torch. And the day after the Olympic torch, I saw that in the big television screen, because you really couldn't see the stage, sweat is coming off the top of his head. And I realized there's no pockets in the damn sweatsuit. And he's trying to keep his hands steady enough to light the torch. And the next day in his hotel room, when just the two of us are sitting, he reaches into the closet and he pulls out the Olympic torch and he puts it in my hands. And it thrilled me only that he wanted to share it. On the Olympics, I have my own opinion about the honesty of a lot of it. But anyway, he showed me his arm, and he showed me that he had burned himself lighting the torch, and nobody knew it.
Jerry, how did he deal privately with the Parkinson's? You mentioned his appearance at the Olympics. We were talking about him earlier, making jokes about his health and his position at the BBC Sports Personality of the Century in 1999. But when he was alone, when he was private, how did he deal with having become a shell of his former self?
Well, I tell you, toward the end, no, I haven't seen him, I say, for a while, but my impression is, because I had seen him with Parkinson's, of course, and for a number of years, he would gather himself if he was with a couple of people he knew or whatever, and he would make comments, and his voice had changed to the point where that day in the hotel room, after he had lit the torch, he would speak in 2 words, and they'd be 2 paragraphs or 1 paragraph, and you'd have to put it together. And it took you a little while to get your ear accustomed to the way he now spoke. But you could do it. But he was very insistent. He never wanted to stop communicating. I shouldn't say never, because I wasn't with him in private moments for many years. But for all that time, when in the beginning, when it was just taking over his life, it was like a demon within him, you know. And it always occurred to me, he knew what he was saying. He knew what he was doing. He couldn't get it out. His mind was a prisoner of his lack of motor skills as it began to disintegrate. And after that, you know, I didn't see him much, and I don't think he saw anybody very much. About 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I saw a picture in the paper. His hair was dyed. He had sunglasses on. His chin was on his chest. And I said, my God, you know. And I spoke with Gene Kilroy, who managed so many camps for him, and such a dear friend of his. We were talking about this. He lives in the same town I live. And I said, Gene, and he was commenting about something. I said, Gene, you have to understand something. This is not Muhammad Ali. And you and I have to understand at this moment, we have to treasure all the memories we have of him. There ain't going to be any more.
Jerry, thank you very much indeed. We're talking about his later years, but believe me, we're treasuring his memories and recapping the highlights of his life here on BBC News and BBC Breakfast this morning. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.